Hannah.
Firstly, can I thank the Minister and his team for their work on this package, including the member for Putney, who was so well regarded by everybody who came across her in Northern Ireland. Can I thank officials in the Department of Foreign Affairs in Dublin for the same, because that partnership is vital to moving forward. And the SDLP acknowledges the progress in this package if it is faithfully captured in the legislation. And when we push for more and better, please know that that comes from a sincere and long-held determination to get this right for families, for survivors and for our society as a whole. Despite some voices to the contrary, including recently, I don't believe that most people do believe that any murder in Northern Ireland was justified or inevitable or useful or worthy of cover-up, and perpetuating those narratives is an enormous challenge for the present and for the future as well. But does the Secretary of State agree with me that all of the work invested by families and campaigners and by his officials will be worth nothing if those who created victims, whether Republican or Loyalist paramilitaries or state forces who assisted them, do not approach this with full transparency and disclosure and put honesty and the needs of victims over the needs of their own narratives?
Well, my honourable friend gives me the opportunity to pay tribute to my extraordinary officials, some of whom are here with us today, who have, it's been the privilege of my life to work with them on all of this. And I know that my honourable friend will hold us to the highest standards, and I accept what she says in the spirit in which it's offered. As I indicated to the House earlier, I want there to be the maximum provision of information to families, but we also have to acknowledge that all governments, any government, has responsibilities for the security of the state and to protect life, and this government will uphold both.
Dr Al Pinkerton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the Minister to his place, and can I also welcome my honourable friend to his new place, and to, frankly, the best job that somebody could have in opposition. I have spent the summer speaking to veterans groups who I've been speaking to about that vital commitment that they need to feel, that the process of prosecution does not become persecution. And whilst many of those veterans recognise that they went to Northern Ireland in order to restore the rule of law, and that they think that they should be subject to the laws of this land, they nonetheless remain incredibly anxious about the possibility that the process of persecution becomes persecution. Can I ask the Secretary of State, has he had the official backing of any veterans group for the approach that he has taken? And separately, can I also ask, has he had any assurances from the Republic of Ireland government that they will, as a result of the publication of this bill, drop the interstate case against the United Kingdom?
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman, and can I thank him for the role he played when he was leading for the Liberal Democrats on Northern Ireland. The truth is that with the passage of time, the possibility of prosecutions becomes increasingly remote. We all know that to be the case. Most of the families I have met, most, not all, have said, I know no one's going to be held to account through a judicial process, but I just want to know what happened. That's what I want. And it causes such pain and grief that answer cannot be provided. It really is difficult. And as far as the Irish government is concerned, I believe that they will honour the promises that they have made, because this is a significant moment, this partnership with the Irish government, because in moving from non-cooperation to cooperation, it will open up the possibility of more information coming to families. And look, on the interstate case, that is a matter for the Irish government, but I'm very clear of one thing. The last Legacy Act created circumstances in which the law that was passed was not compatible with our international obligations, and that is the basis of the interstate case. The legislation I'm bringing before the House will fix that, will deal with it. And in those circumstances, there is no basis, in my view, for the interstate case any longer.
Graham Downey.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Secretary of State for his statement today, and in particular for his focus on answers. And it is answers that people want. As someone who lost a friend in Tim Parry when he was murdered by IRA in 1993, I know exactly how important it is for families and everyone who knows victims to get the answers they deserve. And I think the agreement today really is vital in getting that process moving again to get victims and their families the answers that they deserve. Can I ask him to go into a little bit more detail about how he's going to continue that work with families and the victims as this process goes forward, both during the process of the legislation and afterwards, to make sure that answers remains at the absolute heart of what this government is trying to achieve?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for what he has just said. I spoke yesterday to the Victims Commissioner in Northern Ireland. On the day that the framework was published, on the 19th of September, the Taoiseach and I met the Victims and Survivors Forum in Northern Ireland, explained what the framework was seeking to do, and I made a commitment to the Victims Commissioner yesterday that I will come back to meet the Victims and Survivors Forum once they've had a chance to look at the legislation to find out what they think.
Simon Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the interest of trying to solve this issue, I wish the Secretary of State well and hope that he will bring forward the bill and deal with its progress in a spirit of compromise and cooperation between the parties to try to find the best landing spot possible. He mentioned earlier good faith, and that is a precious resource which is often very short in supply when it comes to this issue. Could he, because I think it would be helpful, work vigorously with the Irish government for them to work at speed and pace to ascertain what, if any, legislative measures they require to make good on what it is they have committed to, and as best as possible to work those two legislations in lockstep in order to give confidence to both sides who have concerns when it comes to good faith, or rather the absence of it.
Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for what he said, and I hope he will know that I will do anything and everything I can to try and find a way forward in partnership with as many members of the House as possible, because this question has for a long period of time been subject to the bipartisanship that is in the main characterised relations between the parties in the House on matters to do with Northern Ireland. I recognise that there are disagreements in relation to one aspect of what we are putting forward. Doesn't mean we can't work together on the others. I do take his point about the importance of seeing the legislation that is required in Ireland in order to give effect to this, and I was standing next to the Taoiseach when he made it quite clear, to give an example, that the commitment to enable witnesses to give evidence to the Omagh public inquiry, he said we will legislate to deal with that so that it's in place before the hearings resume in March, and that seems to me to be a very important example of good faith.
Colm Eastwood.
I suppose the Secretary of State will forgive some of us for being cautious before we are ready to believe that the government will, and the state and any paramilitary organisation will give over the information that's required. In fact, right now, there are families across the road in the Supreme Court in legal dispute with the government because the government is withholding information from them. We know there's a pattern in this. When it comes to inquests, will he look again at the sifting process, and will he put family views, and will we give family views primacy when it comes to deciding which cases will have an inquest? And will he drop his proposal? Will he drop his proposal to give himself the power to appoint judges in that inquisitorial mechanism? Because a very important principle of the independence of the judiciary needs to be held up.
Well, on the subject of inquests, there will be 3 statutory tests that the Solicitor General will have to apply. And I've just indicated in answer to an earlier question what they are. Family views will be one of the considerations. But if inquests can't proceed because of sensitive information, well, wouldn't it be more sensible to put it into the Commission, which can deal with sensitive information because it has provision for closed hearings? No doubt my honourable friend will make the point about appointment processes when we come to discuss the bill. I would, however, just point out, and it's also relevant to the point that's been made from the opposition benches, the agreement on the information retrieval mechanism. This was something that the previous Conservative government negotiated with the Irish government and formed part of the Stormont House Agreement. What is the purpose of it? The purpose of it is to enable those who have information to pass it to the body, which can then pass it to the families, and that information will be a protected disclosure, which is not the same as immunity. It will be a protected disclosure. That system has worked very well in recovering quite a number of the remains of those who were abducted, tortured, murdered and buried by the IRA through the ICLVR, and I hope that that is a step forward in going back to what was agreed at Stormont House by the last government, and the Irish government and the political parties, well, not all of them, will be welcome on all sides.
Sorcher Eastwood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Secretary of State, you refer to this as unfinished business, and in the last statement we heard about the successes of the peace process in Northern Ireland. I was 12 years old when the Good Friday Agreement was signed. I now stand here 40 years of age as the MP for Lagan Valley, and my constituents deserve truth and justice as much as anybody else. We've heard a lot today about veterans, and my family were part of that cohort, and they proudly served, along with many others. They do not want an amnesty. They do not want immunity. They do not want equivocation with terrorists, which was proposed by the outgoing government. We hear about people in Northern Ireland that were in the wrong place at the wrong time whenever they died. They were not. It was the terrorists that were in the wrong place, doing the wrong work. We must send out a clear signal, no matter what our political opinion, that terrorism was wrong in the past and it is wrong now. Can you give me your guarantee that you will discuss this with the Northern Ireland Executive and my ministerial colleagues to make sure that those families who so rightfully deserve truth and justice actually have the resource to be able to get it?
Well, may I say to the honourable member, I agree with every single word that she expressed so powerfully and so forcefully, and I would encourage those who've been chuntering from a sedentary position during the course of these exchanges to reflect on the point that you made about there are many people who say we don't want immunity. We don't want immunity, and we certainly object to it being given to those who committed the most appalling crimes. And voices in Northern Ireland really do need to be listened to, which is why it's the failure to do that, including in the last Legacy Act, why I made the point that there's a terrible lack of trust on the part of politicians over a long period of time. I'm not going to make a party point. There is a terrible lack of trust in politicians because they've seen attempts before and they haven't worked. We've got to try and make this work, and I've already begun the process of talking to her colleagues in the Northern Ireland Executive.
Joe White. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Following my colleague's last question, I'd like to say that the Tories' immunity system would have meant immunity for the perpetrators of terrorist crimes across the UK. And our domestic courts have determined this. Does the Minister agree that this government has no choice but to rectify the situation?
Well, I agree with my honourable friend. She makes the point extremely forcefully. It didn't work. It was never deliverable. There never was immunity. It was a false promise made to veterans who were badly let down and badly served by the last government. And whoever won the election last year would have had to deal with this mess that we have inherited, and that is what we are seeking to do.
Sir David Davies.
In March of this year, it was widely reported that the Secretary of State gave his word to Mairead Kelly, the sister of IRA murderer Patrick Kelly, that there would be an inquest on the Loughgall incident. Is this remedial order a fulfilment of that promise? Because if so, it means 30 years on, the government is dragging veterans into court over an operation that stopped 8 heavily armed IRA murderers. Men who had already killed, men who are on their way to kill again, and with weapons that have been used in 40 previous murders. Let's be clear. By stopping this attack, those soldiers prevented the murder of many more innocent Northern Ireland citizens. So what justice is served by punishing those brave soldiers with a stressful and unnecessary process? The Liberal who spoke earlier described it as a persecution. punishing them for doing nothing more than their duty. Is this really what the Secretary of State intends?
The fact is that this government was elected on a commitment because there was a lot of opposition to the ending of inquests under the Legacy Act. There was, maybe not from him, but from a lot of other people in Northern Ireland, and the government came in committed to restore the inquests that had started and were stopped. And the reason that I said what I said is because Loughall, as I've already indicated to the Shadow Secretary of State, is one of those 9 cases. It is for the independent coronial system to take a decision about that. But one of the factors, of course, that coroners have to take into account is how they're going to deal with any sensitive information that is provided. And we know from other inquests that there have been a number of cases where the coroners said, well, I accept that if this information cannot see the light of day, they've examined the public interest immunity certificate and have reached the conclusion that I can't take the case any further. And in those circumstances, the sensible thing would be for cases to move into the Commission where sensitive information can be considered.
Lawrence Sullivan.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome the Secretary of State's commitment to new protections for veterans. Will he update the House on the discussions he and the MOD ministers have had with veterans and their representative groups about these measures?
Well, we have had many such discussions. My honourable and gallant friend and myself and the Defence Secretary, and the measures that I have announced will be contained in this bill and the other non-legislative measures are the result of those discussions, because we've listened very carefully to the concerns that veterans have expressed, and we've come forward with what we think is a fair, reasonable, balanced package of measures that will provide protection while also taking forward the responsibility we have to enable those families to find answers, including forces families.
Stuart Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm against the repealing of the Legacy Act, and I served in Northern Ireland, and I'm doing so in opposition now. I raised in government major concern and dishonour when none of the benches or the points the Minister has raised now didn't have the decency to come to this House and debate them. They let it go through, and it went on Hansard that actually very few people even bothered to come to the chamber to debate this when it was when we took it through government. But the 2 points I do have quickly are the support for veterans. You've spoken about the process they will have to go to. I want to know what support is available, as you have mentioned, and also fairer disclosure. When the terrorists didn't keep records, but the British Army did, how are you going to ensure fairer disclosure through that process?
Secretary of State, can I just remind members not to refer to you, as that means me. Secretary of State.
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable member for his point. Well, there is support available for veterans through the Ministry of Defence, and I know that the Armed Forces Minister is very, very committed to making sure that veterans get all the support they need, which is in part reflected in the package that we have announced. On disclosure,